Obviously, there doesn't seem to be fissures between Trump and Elon since he's trying to boost his company right now, which is, I guess it shouldn't go without saying, is like not very presidential material. Like that in the past, it's not like if Reagan was like holding up the product of his biggest donor, I think that would have been maybe a scandal in the newspaper the next morning. But anyway, what are you seeing out there?
It is striking. I mean, I feel like we're so just through the looking glass, but the idea of the president being like, "Look, my buddy's company's in trouble. You got to go buy."
Right. Hello and welcome to the Bulwark Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Miller. Today's guest is the newest senior reporter here at the Bulwark. He joined us from the Washington Post, where he covered the media and conspiracy theories and other such matters. He's the author of Trust the Plan, The Rise of QAnon and the Conspiracy That Unhinged America. And he's the former host of one of my favorite pods. It was called Fever Dreams at the Daily Beast. It's Will Sommer, and right now he's living that fever dream in your fever dreams are our reality. Yes. I guess is what I meant.
Yes, we're all in the fever dream now, right?
Well, I mean, did you even? I guess I want to start before we get to the news by doing your backstory. I mean, I guess we all imagined that Trump could possibly win again, right? It was not like we were totally blindsided by that possibility, particularly here at the Bulwark, but. I mean, did you ever imagine when you were covering the fever swamps of QAnon, back 4 or 5 years ago, doing this podcast that like these people would be literally running the country? I mean, it's true now, even in a way that it wasn't in 2018.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to imagine. I feel like sort of every step on the road, and I'm sure a lot of people feel like this, is that it's like every step is like, wow, I never would have thought it would have come to this. The idea that, we're at the point where Dan Bongino getting appointed to the FBI or Kash Patel even to head the FBI, I think it's like, oh, Kash Patel, the recurring Steve Bannon guest, and it's like, oh, of course, now that's such a common thing. I mean, it's just like it's a lot to grapple with, and I think it sort of alarmingly, raises questions about what's going to happen in 2 or 3 years from now. But at the same time, I think, that's why there's such value in kind of keeping up with these characters.
Yeah, I guess, and I say this to people, who are not of this world, which include, kind of my normie former Republican friends, as well as like liberals and progressives. I'm like, I know these people. And it gives me a different perspective on what we have to come. I guess I won't jaundice you by telling you what I think. What the fact that you have just entrenched yourselves in these fever swamps, does that make you more alarmed, more concerned, more feeling like it's going to just be a clown show? Like what how does your perspective inform what you think is ahead here?
Yeah, I mean, well, I grew up as like a young teen Republican in Texas. I mean, I was like obsessed with like Bill O'Reilly and Ayn Rand and all this stuff. And I would stay up late listening to talk radio. And it really sticks out to me. I was like in 8th grade listening to Michael Savage, and he was like, "We just got to nuke China, just nuke those dams and flood the whole country." And I thought, man, if this is what like one of the main voices in the party wants, or in the right wing media, I feel like there's this disconnect between the voters and what the politicians are doing, which is like cutting Social Security, trying to balance the budget, stuff like that. And ultimately, we saw that contradiction resolved by Trump, who is giving the voters all these kind of atavistic, giving into their urges. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it is ominous for me because to be keeping up with this stuff so closely and then think, well, geez, it seems like Trump is really willing to do a lot of things for the base. And so what is he going to do next?
So, Will, the shorthand of that is what you're telling me is that what the realization I came to about the dangers of my party, like in my 30s, was something you realized in 8th grade. Was that the short summary?
It went on for a few more years, and then I was working for this like state Senate primary campaign in Texas, and Dan Patrick, who's now the lieutenant governor, he won and he beat my candidate, and I thought, well, that guy's like a total lunatic. If this is and he won in a landslide. Yeah. And I thought, that was kind of like my crisis moment with the GOP, where I thought, if this is what the voters want, I mean, that's not what I want, and so I think I have to go another direction.
I wish I had my crisis moment in high school. Yeah. I mean, look, the thing that I tell you is you hate, I don't want to judge, lest I be judged, in these sort of situations. I try to follow the guidelines and the morals that I was taught as a youth. But like, these are, what I tell people is these people are worse than you think. I had an opportunity to hang out with, one of these kind of bro podcaster guys recently, who obviously doesn't know anything about politics and has been having, Republicans on the pod. And that's like what I tried to get through to him is I was like, I don't think you actually know these people. I don't think that you're necessarily a bad person. I said that a lot of these people are very bad and their intentions and motives are bad. And if you follow them over time and see the way that they act, and the way that they change their tune to meet the moment and the way that they're needlessly cruel to people to advance themselves, right? Like, the evidence piles up that there are many people, maybe not the entire Trump administration, but many people who are ill-motived. And that to me is like the most alarming thing that I try to get through to people. I don't know. Am I being too harsh?
Well, no, I think there's a lot to that. I mean, you think about Trump's interview on Joe Rogan, where people said, "Oh, he just came off like a normal guy. I thought he'd be kind of foaming at the mouth or doing Hitler salutes or what have you." And so you have to kind of, as you said, you have to kind of build up, as I do. I mean, I build up kind of files on these people and build up kind of like what they're. That's why I'm so fascinated by kind of the feuds and the kind of these inflection moments where people really have to sort of reveal themselves.
Yeah, all right. Well, we're going to do an around the world with some of the people that you've built up files on over the years at the end of the pod, but we've got to do a little bit of news. And I guess this is news in the world that we live in now, but Trump is out with a bleat. That's how we find out what's happening in this country. And today's announcement is kind of an interesting one. He says that he's going to buy a brand new Tesla today as a show of confidence and support for Elon Musk. He does that on the heels of an interview last night that Elon Musk did with Larry Kudlow. I'm about to play the clip. Musk in this clip is, it seems to me, on the brink of tears, and he's withering and hemming and hawing in the face of softball questioning from Kudlow, who worked in the Trump administration and could best be described as a lickspittle. So here's Musk responding to Larry Kudlow's very tough questioning.
How are you running your other businesses?
With great difficulty. Yeah, I mean...
But there's no turning back, you're saying?
I'm just here trying to make government more efficient, eliminate waste and fraud, and so far we're making good progress.
The pauses are longer every time I listen to it.
That sigh, that mic, really crisp mic for the sigh there.
What do you make of this? I mean, obviously, Elon's, like, the Tesla stock is crashing. The rocket was shooting debris over the Gulf of Mexico. I do have to say, producer Jason is wearing a Gulf of Mexico shirt today. So it's another message to you, Eagle-eyed Martin. You can come at this podcast if you want, if you think that it's worth targeting over wrong speak. But he has the some failings in his private businesses. I guess Trump is trying to bail him out. But I don't know what the folks that you're monitoring, what do they make of the fact that Elon is, like, pretty obviously unraveling? Like, I don't think it's TDS to look at that interview and be like, this is a man that is losing his grips on things.
Well, it's interesting to see, as you pointed out, I mean, Larry Kudlow is not really like grilling Elon. He's just saying, how do you do such an amazing job saving the country and running all these businesses? And Elon goes, oh my God, I don't know. It's not going well. I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, it's just crazy to think about the Tesla brand, even just since this administration started. In December, I had a family member who was like, well, kind of California Democrat. Well, maybe I'll buy a Tesla. I don't love Elon. But now, I mean, the idea of buying a Tesla just seems crazy I think for liberals, at least. For sure.
Yeah, no, I've been discussing about how much joy I got on Lundy Gras watching people pelt the Cybertrucks with beads. And it was a big father moment for me, having to tell my child, my 7-year-old, that she couldn't participate in that. I'm like, we've got to be the bigger people. Okay, we can't pelt it with beads while it's silently inside. I'm beaming. I wonder, like, what you make of the, as part of this, right? Like, there are the people in MAGA world who are just, they're on board for everything. Like, we're so excited for Doge, whatever Mr. Trump says, we're on board with. You have the more ideological MAGA, if you will, the Bannon wing, folks, the people that have an actual view of nationalism, maybe a skepticism of the big tech oligarchs, a skepticism of the fact that there are, like, so many South African billionaires around the president right now. And then you have people that just, like, want to succeed. Like, I've seen in my feed some, what just like random like MAGA people that I follow that are just kind of like a little worried about like just that the Elon thing is hurting Trump, right? Like that he's just not that effective. Like what are you kind of seeing out there? Do you see any fissures? Obviously, there doesn't seem to be fissures between Trump and Elon since he's trying to boost his company right now, which is, I guess it shouldn't go without saying, is like not very presidential material. Like that in the past, it's not like if Reagan was like holding up the product of his biggest donor, I think that would have been maybe a scandal in the newspaper the next morning. But anyway, what are you seeing out there?
It is striking. I mean, I feel like we're so just through the looking glass, but the idea of the president being like, look, my buddy's company's in trouble. You got to go buy. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, there are, it strikes me as sort of a weak moment for Elon. A lot of these agencies previously did not have heads, or people were kind of the cabinet heads were just getting in control of them. Now we're starting to see, obviously, the Times reported on the Sean Duffy Elon fight. And I think there's a lot more of that, like, all right, buddy, like back off, stop sending the 12-year-olds into my office to fire everyone. And I think there's this kind of classic challenge between what you describe as the Bannonite wing, perhaps, and their main focus is immigration, deporting people, building the wall, a sort of, I think, Russia tilting foreign policy as secondary, but they don't really care that much about the budget. And so they don't care about these kind of hack and slash things that they know are going to just anger people and get them kicked out of office or lose control of Congress quicker. And so that's kind of the fracture point.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, Elon, Bannon would be happy to tax the Elons of the world. And they do want that. I guess that where they come into alignment is they do both want liberal deep state bureaucrats to suffer. Right. And
yes.
So they're getting a little bit of joy out of that. Right. Like, but again, this is where the Trump line about the using a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Like, I mean, like when I was interviewing Bannon, I asked him, like, who do you want him to go after? I knew he was like talking specifically about the TV lawyers because they annoy him because he watches a lot of cable news, and like the FBI, the FBI officials and the DOJ officials that investigated Trump, and like the random liberal boogeymen at the EPA and the Department of Education. It's not like they were out there clamoring for the people in Los Alamos to get fired, right, or like the VA to be unraveled, right? Like those people are some of the VA people are listening to Bannon, right? I mean, like that, like that. It's just been totally indiscriminate in a way that I think is not helping him on the one area where they might have been aligned.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think they're missing the or there's a sense of like that's why USAID made such a tasty target for them, because it's like it's these liberal pencil necks who are helping people in other countries, whereas it is surprising to me that the VA has been such an immediate target, because you would think of that as something you wouldn't really hit to avoid alienating Trump voters. The other thing about Bannon is, like, I think it's important to keep in mind how much of his agita towards tech people is motivated by his belief that we're going to become robots, essentially. I think a lot of people underscore, like, he has a singularity correspondent, a guy who comes on the show every couple of weeks. And the singularity being, by the way, the moment our consciousnesses are uploaded into the matrix, essentially, and we all become robots. And so, I mean, this is like a very pressing issue to him. On the other hand, Elon is implanting chips in people's brains. So he's really they're on the opposite sides of, like, do we become cyborgs? And for both of them, they see this as like a very relevant issue.
Okay. Well, had Kamala won and had there been no news today, I would have just derailed the entire podcast, and we would have spent the rest of the time discussing the singularity versus cyborg war between Bannon and Musk. But unfortunately, we have other stuff to get to. We'll come back to that on another show. I wanted to get your take on the MAHA wars. I mentioned on yesterday's podcast that RFK had been kind of quiet, which I'm happy about. Less RFK, the better, I think. The more dilettante RFK, like hanging out with the rich people that had snubbed him, the better. The more RFK, like meeting with researchers and the NIH and telling them that they, have to look into different solutions for the mumps, the worse. But RFK came back out in the public yesterday. He was at Steak and Shake. This hurts me as a St. Louis native, born in St. Louis. Steak and Shake was very formative to my childhood. A lot of Steak and Shake rewards after my report cards came in. And Steak and Shake has gone MAHA, they allegedly. at least for branding purposes. We'll get into that in a second. And been posting about how they are now making their fries beef tallow. And as appreciation for that, Hannity and RFK went to a Steak and Shake and did an interview yesterday. I want to play you a clip from it.
Steak and Shake has been great. We're very grateful for them for RFKing the French fries. They turned me into a verb. But also Popeyes.
By the way, a plastic straw. Thank you. Thank God. I can't stand those paper straws. I hate them.
Okay. You see RFK uncomfortably kind of laughing there. I think RFK probably be on the side of paper straws. He's not sure exactly of where he is on the culture wars here. And also in the interview, the poor waiter brings RFK a free shake. It is called Steak and Shake. And RFK freaks out and has a moment where he stares at the camera like it's like one of the TV shows with a confessional. And he's like, I didn't order this. He stares right at the lens. It's a very uncomfortable moment. But talk to us about the Steak and Shake affair and what's been happening with the beef tallow.
Yeah, so this is an unusually controversial choice, I guess, for a fast food stop. So last week, Steak and Shake tried to rebrand as the sort of like anti-woke fast food chain. They put up some stuff with like kind of suspiciously kind of like Nazi type font, like a lot of like Gothic font about their burgers. And they said, well, we're going to start doing our fries only in beef tallow. And so there's sort of like this paranoia about seed oils, so like canola oil, other oils, this idea that they're like introducing some sort of like impurities into your body. This is very big on the right. They call them the sinister oils. They call the hateful eight. So it's like, it's good they're not getting over dramatic about it. But so Steak and Shake.
The hateful eight oils?
Yes. Yeah. So it's like the oils. It's like, canola oil.
Is olive oil in the hateful eight, or is that on the good side?
I was curious about this, actually. The olive oil is safe, I guess. Okay. So that's all good. And so they say what instead they want to cook things in is beef tallow, so beef fat. Now, when Steak and Shake said, well, we're doing beef tallow, then there was kind of this, people said, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But then some of these like MAHA influencers, this woman named Alex Clark said, well, actually, no, their fries are pre-treated in seed oil, which seems to, and I mean, this is getting to the point trying to figure this out that I need to go to a Steak and Shake and just go in the kitchen, because I asked Steak and Shake about this and they didn't get back to me. But they said to Alex Clark, they said, well, supply chains are hard. Essentially, they basically said, you're right. They said, well, who's to say, we're trying to get the beef tallow in. Another guy, a MAHA guy, showed up at a Steak and Shake and said, I want to see the beef tallow. And they said, well, here's a picture on our cell phone of what it looks like. And so, I mean, it's this very, it's kind of getting to, it's very like citizen journalists. Like, they're trying to figure it out.
It doesn't seem like RFK really cares. He's just happy that he's been verbed.
Yes, exactly. They said, yeah, we've RFK'd the fries. Yeah.
Maybe they'll send inspectors. We fired most of HHS. I don't know if they've got any staff yet. We can reapportion some of the people that were supposed to be doing research on infectious disease and have them go to random Steak and Shakes to test whether any of the hateful eight oils. I've pulled them up just for people who are concerned. Soybean oil, corn oil, canola, sunflower, cottonseed, safflower, grapeseed, or rice bran. Oh boy, I'm sure some of our soybean farmers will probably be unhappy to learn that they're part of the hateful eight.
Well, they really hate soy. I mean, soy is probably the most hateful, right? Because that's why they call you soy boys. They think it's feminizing and all that. Yeah.
Huh. What do you sense like any when you're following these? Because MAHA influencers is one area that I've not really delved into. Do you think that there's going to be an awakening moment where they realize that like the people that they have now aligned with actually don't care about them at all?
It's a good question. I mean, there is this tension where they say, oh, yeah, it is time we get America healthy again and all this. Yeah. But I mean, you think back to Michelle Obama's, let's get moving. Let's give Bloomberg kids like a piece of lettuce exactly for lunch, and just the huge reaction and the idea that, we're going to tell all these gigantic food conglomerates that, back the Republican Party to, suddenly get into, ditch the hateful eight, et cetera. I mean, just seems very slim. And so, but for now, I mean, I don't know. It seems like RFK is probably skeptical enough of vaccines and all that. That'll probably keep them happy.
Yeah. Yeah. And also during the interview, Hannity orders a Coke. And then like he has to apologize. He kind of apologizes to RFK for it. And he's like, oh, this guy might get mad at me. He's like, I won't drink the whole thing. And it's just like, this is very, very opposite to the fact that Fox Primetime, like, paid their bills on anti-nanny state thing, like making fun of the nanny state was like the bread and butter of Fox for a while. And like here you have like the signature Fox host, like literally apologizing to the nanny sitting across the table from him for ordering a Coke. I just don't know how long that marriage is going to last. I want to get into Pam Bondi drama because we haven't talked about it at all on the pod. Bondi, you might think that some of the things that people would be concerned about are the fact that she's basically said that we're not investigating foreign interference in elections anymore. We're not investigating a lot of different white collar crimes. It's going to be a really golden age for white collar criminals right now, and that the controversy might circle around that from the working man. But instead, people are mad at her because she has not fully publicized the documents around a couple of key conspiracies that they have, the Seth Rich conspiracy and the Epstein thing. We'll get into the Epstein binders. She did a kind of a half job on that. So, but what's the deal with the Seth Rich thing? First?
Yeah, so there's this whole demand for disclosure and like we're going to get the documents. In the Seth Rich case, there's a lawyer who's been suing for several years now to get the FBI files on Seth Rich, who of course was murdered in 2016, a Democratic staffer. And so
just really quick for people who don't know, it's just such a fucking horrible story. It's so sick. This poor guy is murdered coming home from the bar late at night, and his family has been harassed for years because he became the center of this controversy that like the Clintons had murdered him because he had the secret document that knew that Bernie should have won or whatever. And this is a really great book, Murder on W Street by Andy Kroll is a great reporter about this. And it's just the way that this family was treated is horrific. And so anyway, they're now trying to, I guess, resurrect that.
Yeah. Right. And the key to that would be that if you proved, I mean, there's no evidence, but if you proved that Seth Rich leaked the DNC emails to WikiLeaks, then that would mean the Russia hack was fake. And so Trump would be exonerated. And so that's kind of like why they pursued it. So this guy has been pushing for these documents forever. I suspect the documents are just, the DC police saying, yeah, we think it was a botched robbery and that's it. But now that the FBI has continued to withhold the documents and said, well, maybe we'll give you a list of the documents. So now that we see these pro-Trump influencers saying, Pam Bondi, God darn it, you got to release this stuff. And let's say she does release it. They're still going to be mad because there's not a document that says Hillary Clinton, here's a picture of Hillary Clinton shooting Seth Rich. Right. And so that's going to keep going. And I think it depends how much Trump cares about this stuff, probably not hugely, but I do think she's really being set up to take the fall for a lot of these conspiracy theories not coming true.
Yeah, we so to this point, also on the Epstein files, she tried to split the baby, I guess, on this. We covered this a little bit on the podcast last week, but it's just set the stage. Like there's this demand. I don't really understand how this is me and Matt Iglesias are aligned on this. I don't really understand how the left let the Jeffrey Epstein prison murder become a right-coded conspiracy theory when, like, if Jeffrey Epstein was murdered in prison, like it happened during the Trump administration, and Trump and Epstein were friends, and Barr and Epstein, Barr was AG, they had connections, and Acosta, who was in the Trump cabinet, had very deep connections to Epstein. I did a long interview with the best reporter on this for a while ago, Julie Brown. We'll put it in the show notes if people want to go and listen and learn more about the Epstein conspiracies. But anyway, despite that, it's become this conspiracy on the right that it's like the left, the deep state was covering this up to protect deep state left-wing people. And so they demanded a list of, all of the Epstein associates, even though much of that list has been reported by Julie Brown, and they demanded some other materials, I guess. So that's the backstory. So take us to kind of what has been happening since.
Yeah. So there's this real focus on they imagine that there's this huge like client list that's going to be, Oprah, Tom Hanks, and whoever, and it's going to be very vindicating. But on the other hand, as you said, I mean, Julie Brown, who knows this better than anybody, and other Epstein reporters have said there isn't really a client list. The names have been redacted are mostly victims or people who weren't really involved, but just who come up in the documents. And so nevertheless, I mean, Pam Bondi was kind of ramping this up. She said, I've got the list on my desk. We've just got to review it. And so then a few days later, all these influencers, these MAGA people come to the White House for an unrelated meeting. And according to ABC's reporting, Pam Bondi then said, we'll surprise them with the Epstein documents. And so she and Kash showed up and said like, hey, we got them. And then as we know, it turned out to be nearly entirely previously released files, but it still occasioned this kind of like, in retrospect, kind of sick photo op. Everyone's like, look, we got evidence of the child trafficking.
Yeah, they're the smiling.
Yeah, very happy about it because they say that they were sending the message to the press. They were taking pictures of them like, we're the media now.
Yeah, it's a bizarre thing. I mean, just like stepping back from everything, like the people that they chose, right? Like the DOJ. I mean, if you were going to do something like this, I don't know. I'm trying to think about like back when I was a flag, way in the before times. I remember, for example, we were going to give a select group of reporters Jeb's tax returns, right? Because it was, to try to pressure Trump to put out his tax returns. This is, simpler times, and obviously was a strategy that backfired. So the communications director gets a negative mark on that one. But, it's like we picked a couple friendly reporters, right? So hopefully they'd focus on the nice stuff where he gave money to charity or whatever. But then you give a couple, you have the AP in there, right? Like give a finance expert in there. So they lend some credibility to it. Like that is not at all what happened here. Like just talk about the group that was included and that was given this binder full of sex offenders.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, these are even more sensitive documents. Let's make sure that they're treated with, the discretion and the respect, that this issue deserves.
Right. Think about the victims, right? On respect, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of it's sort of a party favor for visiting the White House. And so instead we get, we have Mike Cernovich and Jack Posobiec, who are kind of like notorious Pizzagate promoters and sort of right-wing media characters I guess when it comes to the credibility of their claims, perhaps I would not give them the Epstein documents. We have a woman named Jessica Reed Krause, who I think, put a pin in that. I think she's going to become like, this is one to watch. So she's yes. Yeah, okay. And so she's called House in Habit on Instagram. And she kind of emerged. She was kind of like a lifestyle blogger in Orange County. And then she got really RFK pilled and then, kind of became part of his entourage and had kind of like a feud with Olivia Nuzzi over RFK and all this stuff. And so she got one, and now she's kind of like a citizen sleuth. But this sort of backfired because the influencers who weren't invited, like Laura Loomer, then start digging up things on the ones who were to prove that they're, deep state shills, and that's why we didn't get the real news. And they found this picture of the Krause once wearing a Free Ghislaine Maxwell shirt, which I don't know.
The House and Habit lady from Instagram?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just trying to get my character straight. She was wearing a Free Ghislaine shirt.
Yes. And so I don't know the situation where you ever think that's a good idea. She said at the time, she was like, look at my provocative shirt, which it certainly is.
DC Drano was also there.
Yeah, DC Drano, Chad Prather, who were kind of like MAGA meme lords. This is kind of like the equivalent of like Carpe Donktum, if people remember him. Kind of, the people who make like funny little video edits or memes.
Yeah, it's interesting because, in addition to just like the absurdity, right, that the Department of Justice gives like random lifestyle Instagrammers like these sensitive documents. It is just telling like who they are trying to cater to. Like I had something I was working on that kind of hit the cutting room floor, but it was at the New York Young Republican dinner, at the gala dinner. This is like one of the MAGA Young Republican groups. I remember being struck by like Trump is at the head table and like who was with him at the table. It was like some people that people will know of, like Bannon and Posobiec. But then it was like these folks, like he goes on stage and he's like, he name checks DC Drano and he's name checking, right? Like all these other people. And it's like, that is this circle, right? Like, this is why this is so important. Like this, like it's, I think I've said this before, but it's like this, it's like the Men in Black where the tabloids have the real news. Mm-hmm. It's like, these are the people that they're going to give like a special access to over the next 4 years. And so not that they're going to be offering real news, but like you'll be able to learn things like that will not have been provided to actual journalists.
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of like a Kremlinology to it. And so you can see like, it's like, oh, well, everyone is turning on, for example, after this debacle on Pam Bondi. And so that seems to be reflecting some anger within the administration or the idea that she's been set up as the scapegoat. One of, these Twitter accounts that obviously have the verified thing, and it's just like, FBI real news. Last week they reported, or I should say loosely reported, Kash wants private bodyguards. He's concerned about his security. And that's the kind of thing that obviously I discounted. It got 10,000 retweets. And then last night, some real news outlets tweeted that. And so it does appear that there are...
There you go. That's Men in Black. It's happening. The tabloids have the real news. The random blue checks have the real news.
Exactly. Yeah.
The Kash, as you mentioned it, that's the other thing I've been noticing in the scuttle. Kash is already kind of taking some shots at Bondi. Even though he sort of works for her, right? But there is already some sense there that he wants her to be the fall guy. For
well, within hours of the Binder debacle, she sent him a letter saying, Kash, you held back the good documents, and then they sort of seem to have triangulated it on let's blame SDNY and the FBI office there because maybe we want to purge them anyway, and so there's definitely this back and forth where then he says, well, I gave you the documents. Now there's supposedly more documents to come. I mean, but this is sort of going to be a fruitless journey, but one that I think continues going on with that, the JFK files, all these sort of files.
It's meaningful. It's just, it's just the reality of where we are that this is probably something that makes Bondi more vulnerable than legitimate scandals. Right, if something is going to cost her standing in the administration and in MAGA, it is going to be, getting on the wrong side of these MAGA influencer weirdos, right? Not, the way that she's dismissed people within the DOJ who are just doing their job.
Yeah, certainly. I think these kind of scandals, or the idea of mini scandals, perhaps, the idea that if it just becomes reflexively she's a rhino, right? As you know, that is kind of once you get hit with that, then every time anything goes bad in the Justice Department or they don't indict, some random Democratic member of Congress they don't like, they're going to say, this is because Pam Bondi is running interference for them. And once you get hit with that, it's kind of hard to get back in their good side. And, certainly not something like not enforcing the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. They don't care about that.
Well, the scary thing is, the way to get back on their good side is to do ridiculous things on their behalf.
Yeah.
And so this takes us to one, which is not Bondi, but it's the administration. But it's this explains the Tate brothers stuff. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I know you'd written about them at the Washington Post, and now there's a little bit of this intra-MAGA divide with there. But we've been talking to these guys, so listeners know. But there was a priority of the administration, I guess, allowing them travel and a reprieve from the legitimate investigations that the Romanians and UK had been doing against them. And now they're palling around with Dana White in Vegas. Kash is there, Zuckerberg's there, and one way to kind of signal to the MAGA audience that you are on their side is to be I'll do the most ridiculous thing possible. I'll defend these guys who are unapologetic, misogynists, sexual assault, conspirators, etc.
Yeah, the Tate thing is, I think, so fascinating. It's when the Tates were first under investigation for human trafficking a few years ago, it was striking to me how few ties they did have to the MAGA movement at the time. They were living in Britain and then Romania. They went to the Trump Hotel with kind of some right-wing influencers, but other than that, they weren't huge figures. And it's only after, you would think that this would have been the fall was the human trafficking investigation, but they actually become stars since then. And so this idea that the U.S. pressured Romania to let them travel, and then once they're here, and particularly if they get on a plane to Dubai or something, they're going to escape justice. They're also wanted in the UK. And so you have this interesting divide where I think kind of more your classic conservative types, Ron DeSantis, the Ben Shapiro crew, et cetera, they, I think, understandably do not want think conservatives should embrace alleged human traffickers, people who are on video. I mean, it's not even an allegation. I mean, they said all this stuff about sort of entrapping women into being cam operations and all this kind of stuff. They're wanted on Andrew Tate is wanted on rape charges in the UK. And then you have kind of the more, whatever will get me clicks, or the more Trumpian types who are more than happy to host them on their podcasts. As you said, Dana White embraced them. It was striking to me that not really a Trump figure, but someone from Vanderpump Rules also took pictures with them. And then he said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know who those guys were. I denounced them." But
Mario Lopez did. Slater.
Yeah.
What's
exactly.
up, Slater? What are you doing?
It's interesting also to have this kind of focus on Epstein and human trafficking and that's the worst thing you can do. But then also say, "Oh, come on in, Andrew Tate."
Yeah, it's the good type of human trafficking. It's the MAGA human trafficking. The Shapiro part is interesting because I think work with me here on this theory, but it goes to like the vice signaling of all of this. Like, in order to get the MAGA audience to really feel like you're on their side, you have to take positions that are anathema to like elite sensibilities, right? Or to even moralistic sensibilities. So forget elite sensibilities. And so while Shapiro is holding the line, if you will, by saying that the Tate brothers are bad, like he's simultaneously doing like a MAGA media tour right now, talking about how Trump should pardon Derek Chauvin, the cop that killed George Floyd with the knee to the neck. And this media tour is like pretty, like he's on Charlie Kirk's podcast talking about this, in addition to talking about it on his own. Like he's really been pushing this. And Trump doesn't even have a lot of jurisdiction here, because it's a local charge. Like there is a more minor federal charge, but it wouldn't get him out of jail. And so to me, like Ben is just betraying that, like, okay, it's a calculation, right? Like to demonstrate that I'm still on the MAGA culture war side of things. Like I'm just going to take I'll take an out there position. And if I'm not going to do this on the Tates or on being pro Putin, then I've got to find some other thing to do it on. And I'm going to do it with Derek Chauvin. What do you think about that theory?
I think there's a lot to that. I think each of these people kind of evaluates their audience and their reputations and say, okay, well, it's going to be a little difficult for me to endorse an alleged human trafficker. Maybe on a women's issue, I'll have to shy away. But on a race issue, I can, just say, yeah, pardon Derek Chauvin.
Right. A lot of people have been following the drama related to Aretha, the neighborhood cat that became our cat that is now maybe the neighborhood cat again. I'll give you a quick update here. So during the 100-year winter storm, while I was stuck in New York City, my husband and child invited the neighborhood cat that we'd been feeding, Aretha, into the home. They thought they pulled one over on me because I'm not really a pet man myself. But they were so delighted. And, I accepted it. I accepted that it was going to be my reality. But the cats still like to go outside sometimes. We used to joke about, my daughter really loves The Lion King, so we used to joke about how sometimes the cat likes to roam the Pride Land. Sometimes it likes to come back. And as the weather's gotten warmer, as we've moved into spring, what we found is that Aretha actually prefers the Pride Lands to the home. And so while it still comes back from time to time to get his smalls, and it's still occasionally persuaded to come back by a jiggling of the smalls treats that by my daughter, I'm finding out that maybe I didn't get the house cat that I thought I had agreed to after all. So to me, it kind of feels like a win-win. Aretha is getting its smalls cat food, and I'm getting a part-time pet. I'm getting the credit. Everybody's happy. So this podcast is sponsored by my now favorite podcast sponsor, maybe Smalls. Smalls cat food is protein-packed with preservative-free ingredients you'd find in your fridge. It's delivered right to your door. That's why Cats.com named Smalls the best overall cat food. To get 50% off your first order plus free shipping, head to Smalls.com and use our promo code TheBulwark. After switching to Smalls, 88% of cat owners reported overall health improvements. That's a big deal. The team at Smalls is so confident your cat will love their product that you can try it risk-free. That means they'll refund you if your cat won't eat their food. What are you waiting for? Give your cat the food they deserve. Head to smalls.com and use promo code TheBulwark at checkout for 50% off your first order plus free shipping. That's the best offer you'll find, but you have to use my code TheBulwark for 50% off your first order. One last time, that's promo code TheBulwark for 50% off your first order plus free shipping. Hey, YouTube fam, if you want to support The Bulwark, the best way to do it is by becoming a YouTube Bulwark Plus member. The Bulwark is truly independent. We have no corporate overlords. We're not settling any dumb lawsuits with Trump. By joining, you help support our work, and you can get a bunch of perks right here on this platform. Ad-free content, bonus videos, live streams, and some emojis of me, which I guess some people want. So come join, come hang out, become a Bulwark YouTube Plus member, and I'll be seeing you in the comments. So behave. As I tease at the top, I want to do around the world of Trumpistan for people, because we've talked about all these people, but unfortunately, well, you don't have to. I guess everybody has the option to just not care about this, and live your life and tend to your garden. And I honor that choice if you've chosen to do this. But if you want to know what's happening in the Trump administration, unfortunately, you have to understand these people. And so, a couple of characters, I mentioned him earlier in the pod. You've been covering all these guys for a while now, so I just want you to give us a little nugget on them, a little backstory. DC, the Washington DC, the U.S. Attorney Ed Martin, Ed Martin.
Yeah, Ed Martin's a fascinating guy. I don't think he has any experience as a prosecutor.
No.
I was previously aware of him because Phyllis Schlafly, sort of the anti-feminist icon, who died maybe a decade ago or so. He was kind of like her chief crony. And there was this big flap over like control of her legacy. And so I was familiar with, he wrote this, he got this memo that was just like, here's how we wrest the control of Phyllis Schlafly's image away. And
is this,
all this,
I'm going from memory. Is it not true? Wasn't he on the side of the gay son? But like the gay son was kind of like a self-hating gay or something.
I think it's Andy Schlafly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like they aligned against the more like and because they went MAGA and they aligned against the more religious children.
I think that's
I'm going
exactly
just from memory.
Yeah, I can't remember the, like sort of the disposition of the other children, but it was like they went with sort of even like a more kind of aggressive like name. It was sort of a more aggressive like MAGA type brand. Yeah. And so there was that. And then when he got appointed, I was like, wait, like the Phyllis Schlafly guy, because I think I talked to him at the time when I was writing about it. And I mean, he is obviously like U.S. attorney is also a uniquely important role in D.C. because it also prosecutes sort of street crime and drugs and gun stuff, unlike other jurisdictions. And so I thought, oh, geez, I thought there was supposed to be this, like, we were going to take crime in DC really seriously. I thought that was part of the administration's job. But instead, we get him. This is the guy who's posting the letters people may have seen. Elon, I heard that they're coming after Doge. I'm working on the president's behalf, or I think he described himself as Trump's lawyer in one case. And so it's kind of a clown show so far.
Yeah. You bring up a good point. I talked about this a little bit with SE Cup yesterday. Like the crime was allegedly one of the kind of core tenets of what they were running on. And so this DC U.S. attorney pick, right? Like, crime DC is up. Trump is, all the Trump people are living there now. Like, you could have imagined a route that they went where they picked somebody that was like a very draconian, like aggressive, like crime stopping U.S. attorney that was like going to clean up DC or whatever. And instead, they've like done the opposite. Like, and this guy is like writing letters to Georgetown about how they have too many DEI offices in their college, and sending off letter, attacking the AP for not using Gulf of America, and right, like, and like a total clown with no prosecutorial experience, who is clearly not focused at all on actual crime in the District of Columbia.
Yeah, I mean, this is the same prosecutor who sent the letter to, I believe, Chuck Schumer and another member of Congress for saying, something like, you got to don't bring a knife to a gunfight, like these kind of like rhetorical gambits, and saying, were you threatening to kill someone?
Yes, it was. Chuck really was. He was threatening. He was threatening murder. You got him, Ed. We'll see in court. We'll see in court, Chuck. All right. You mentioned him earlier. Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino. And before I give you get to give your backstory, because I don't think I've gotten to this on the pod yet. Dan Bongino, after being named, I have actually two facts that I want to share from my side. Number one is I have on good authority that, or I guess this is public now. Yes, this is public now. That Kash met with like the FBI union, like the bureau, the agents union, met with the leadership and promised them that he was going to have a deputy that was somebody that had experience, and there were certain kind of metrics that they wanted the deputy to have. Kash agreed to that. Kash suggested. You hate to hand it to Kash, but Kash suggested apparently a couple of people that would have fit this bill. Trump says no, overrules him, picks Bongino, who has no experience, has never been an agent, and then Bongino can't join for a week because he's got to keep podcasting to fulfill his advertisers, the obligations to his advertisers, including one advertiser that's like. We protect you from the deep state, which Dan Bongino is about to be. The whole thing is just so fucking ridiculous. So anyway, I'm sorry. Court, balls in your court. Dan
well,
Bongino.
I mean, it's important to have your priorities straight. Get those referral codes out, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, Dan Bongino is a guy I became aware of just sort of like driving around DC and listening to the local talk radio. And this was like a local talk radio guy. I mean, 14 years ago, and he was a former Secret Service agent, and he would call in and say, oh, Obama's a scumbag, and then he had this kind of failed run for the Senate in Maryland, and I thought that was the last we would hear of him. And then I said, oh, you got a talk radio show, and he filled the Rush Limbaugh time slot for a lot of people, and now he's going to be the FBI deputy director. And as you said, I mean, this is traditionally sort of a grizzled old hand, sort of someone who's in a way sort of represents the line agents. And instead we are getting a guy who's never been in the FBI and obviously is most recently a podcaster.
I'm curious. The Bongino show never hit for me. All right, I'm an amateur in your space. Like, you're monitoring all this stuff, for a profession. I do it, kind of as a side hustle because I'm a sicko. But I get the Bannon appeal. I get the Candace appeal. I find Ben Shapiro totally revolting, but I understand it. Like, I understand what people like about it. I don't get the Bongino thing. Like, why did his little talk radio show thing succeed? This person, when I listen to a show, I wonder if this person is literate, if he can read. I mean, is it just a show for really dumb people? Is there something that he does very well that I miss? Like, is there, like, as a podcaster, is there something I could learn from him?
Yeah. You could pick up a couple tips. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, there is, for those of us who consume this content but don't share their politics, I think we can tell when there's someone who is a gifted broadcaster, is entertaining, or you kind of figure out what niche they're fitting into. Sure. Versus Dan Bongino. And that's why I was surprised when a lot of stations picked him up to replace Limbaugh, because I thought Limbaugh was a fun guy to listen to. Whereas, I mean, Dan Bongino's there's kind of like a classic, like, replacement level talker type who's just like a mad guy, kind of like Mark Levin. And you listen to these guys and it's just like, this guy's just mad about it, and like Kennedy too, where, he's just giving you the talking points. There's not like a lightness to it. But I agree. I'm not a huge listener.
Yeah. Okay. So the madness, you think, is what his hook is, that he just gets mad. And people want somebody that's mad.
It's sort of a community of, obviously, the sort of the MAGA universe. It's a world that's not short on people who are mad, and so I think it's kind of funny when someone stands out for being mad. Yeah. I mean, he sent my colleague at the Post an email that was, oh, you dipshit, all this stuff. Yeah. So there are certain guys who are just like, I'm mad.
He's the hottest of the hotheads. All right, I need to take a pause from around Trumpistan because we do have some breaking FBI news per Bill Mitchell. There's just been sent to me. Bill Mitchell is another figure on the online right, and so we'll see whether this ends up being fake news or real news. But it is important that we. I feel like we got to find like the old Men in Black music or something. I need we need a segment for the Will Sommer segment about, or just maybe an audio clip of Tommy Lee Jones talking about how this is where he gets the real news. I'll work on that. Me and Jason will work on that. In the meantime, Bill Mitchell, breaking FBI news. FBI Director Kash Patel has requested a direct line from his home and office to Trump's Oval Office, bypassing AG Pam Bondi. This goes to exactly what we were just talking about. I mean, who knows if this is true or not, but I think it's pretty telling about what they're doing here.
I mean, it kind of seems like Kash is going to be the next attorney general, right? Like and I feel like the way
he already runs the ATF.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think it makes a little more sense because initially it was like, wow, it's a real reach for Kash to be the FBI director, but now you say, well, he's already been the FBI director. How far is attorney general? So I do think Pam Bondi, I think you can tell that she's not as adept in this world of right-wing influencers. Like she should be the one leaking to Bill Mitchell. Yeah. All these people are from Florida, and so there was this claim that after the binders thing happened, just briefly, that basically she gave them these binders to butter them up because she knows she has this deficit with these kind of fame ball types. And you know what? She's right, because they threw her under the bus immediately.
Do you know anything about the Kash, like weird, like living with the timeshare guy in Las Vegas? Have you read this story?
I have read it. I don't know a ton about it, but it is sort of it's just like another like really weird thing. Yeah.
It's very strange. It's something I've got my eye on. Kash wants to live in Vegas while he's running two very large, complicated bureaucracies. He wants to live in Vegas part-time and I guess have a direct line from Bill Mitchell says his home, but reportedly, based on the Nevada Independent, it's not actually his home. He lives in some rich timeshare scammer's house. I asked David Frum about this last week, and he's like, I hope that it's sexual in nature, because if it's not, something really bad is happening. That's a good take. All right, back to around the world of Trumpistan. I don't know if I've mentioned him since he got this job. This is how fucking ludicrous this administration is. The counterterrorism chief for the United States of America is Sebastian Gorka. Tell us about Sebastian Gorka.
Yeah, I mean, Gorka, as you said, at this point, it's like, oh, thank gosh, the adults are in the room, right? Gorka's here. And that's how I felt when, amid everything else. I mean, Gorka's another, it's good to do him after Bongino, because Gorka is like another like classic mad guy, but in kind of like a more gentlemanly way, an old world sensibility. Obviously we know he has in the last administration, there were all these questions about his ties to kind of like quasi-Nazi European groups, and did he get a medal from one of them or what have you? But these days, he too was in talk radio. I mean, it's a sign, I think, we're talking about the second administration versus the first Trump administration, of how things have changed. That in the past 5 years or so, I think Gorka has kind of presented himself as like somewhat of a voice of reason. I mean, he had this like really long running feud with QAnon people, where he was like, you're nutcases and this kind of stuff. I mean, so it's still, I would say, disturbing.
He's not a guy that, is, I would call judicious. Even keel. I mean, he lashed out. He lashed out at me one time in the hallway of CPAC. Started shouting me down. He's taller than you think. He's
very tall.
Yeah. Not great breath. I kind of forget. It's in the circus archive somewhere. I forget what he's calling me. Not a nice name. He's come after you too.
Yeah, I sent him a very nice email. I think maybe it was a story about his feud with QAnon, and I sent him an email. And then I was just a few hours later, I was just sitting around, and he called me, and I'd never talked to him before. And he said, "Is this Will Sommer?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Stick your head in a bucket full of eels." And I was so shocked that I had to have him. I said, "Can you say that again? Like, I need to get that quote down." And he said, "Stick your head in a bucket full of eels." And I thought really nothing of it. And I said, "Okay, well, that's a little weird." And then he played it on his show, and he played it as sort of like kind of a crank yankers situation, where he sort of said, I had a clever little call. So he's an unusual guy.
It's the counterterrorism chief of America. And okay. I guess. Do you feel safe, listeners?
He's going to prank call Hamas.
All right. I want to close by getting into the grifting world. I want to really close with the greatest grift that's going out there. But before we get to that, I just wonder if you have any thoughts, kind of open season, on either the crypto grifts and all the various crypto characters that are around. It's very different from Trump 1.0. And another thing, Bloomberg has an interesting story on this 1789 Capitol which Donald Trump Jr. has gotten his hands in. And just like the madness of the fact that there's now this MAGA VC firm, and like in order to get in the good graces of the administration, like huge companies are now like raising funding rounds, and it's like, we're going to include Sequoia, and we're going to include BlackRock, and then we're going to include Donald Trump Jr. and Blake Masters' firm and give them a little taste. I mean, that I don't think people have really just kind of appreciated how deep that grift is going. So I'm just wondering if you have thoughts on any of those characters or what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, just jumping on the 1789 thing. I mean, it is fascinating that we just have these situations and where, people with connections to the administration or with the ability to sway the president are just sort of really have their pockets. They're saying, hey, come on through. If you want to butter up to me, donate to my VC fund. The Bloomberg article is interesting. Basically, I guess the pitch is that this is kind of the anti-ESG. This is the anti-like woke capital situation. But I think in practice, it's as you said, it's interesting that there are companies having these massive funding rounds, and then also Don Jr. is coming. In terms of the crypto stuff, I follow like crypto world relatively closely. I think it's been interesting that in some ways it seems like the main real heavy bag holders, as they say, are getting frustrated that Trump seems to have been like captured by what you might call shit coins. Like kind of the like when he announced the Bitcoin reserve or the crypto reserve, and he said, look, we're going to have Bitcoin and we're going to have ADA and Sol and Luna. I mean, or these various kind of minor coins that made people concerned. I think that he was just trying to pump the bags.
Don't you fucking downgrade Solana, okay? All right, don't you lump Solana in with all of these other shit coins, all right? Like this is serious business. That's a real coin there. It's a lot of value underneath there. Will.
Yeah, are you holding on to
No,
that?
I'm not holding on to any stuff. All of the crypto listeners get so mad at me. And I'm like, the point, you are correct that there are some serious crypto people that are expressing annoyance with Trump because it's obviously Bitcoin is down, ETH is down, and at some level, I think they rightly see undermining the credibility of their product. And I think that there is clearly some difference between what Bitcoin and what ETH are trying to do and what some of these other like total scams are. That said, like they're not that mad. I mean,
yes.
If it keeps going down, they're going to be mad. There have been a lot of people who've been making money off of this and like getting in on it. And if I was the CEO of Coinbase, I would be in a panic over this. Like I would be out there like trying to, do anything I could to protect myself from the shrapnel of this naked grift that the president of the United States is running with his coins. And like, you're not really seeing that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, they think they are. I mean, they obviously realize. I think this administration is friendlier to crypto than any Democrat would be. Sure. But it is just interesting.
They all got fucking rich beyond anyone's wildest dreams during the Biden years. So I understand that Gary Gensler is like whatever the greatest devil that history has ever known to the crypto world. But all of those guys are going to vacation in Tulum thanks to the money that they made during the Biden years. But anyway, I'm sorry.
I just think it's interesting that like this frustration they're having, that basically it's like they were kind of playing like 3-card Monte or something, and then Trump came and set up a way bigger table to do his own 3-card Monte, but he's doing it a lot clumsier. So people are like, wait a minute, I can see this is a con. They're like, hey, cut it out, Trump.
The 1789 Capitol thing. I'm looking forward to future Will Sommer reporting on this. It's astonishing that Don Jr. is at these tables. Have you seen the meme of like the with the dragons? And it's like the two angry looking dragons, and the one dragon with like the eyes and a tongue going sideways. And like the one dragon that looks like they got hit on the stupid tree and they fell all the way down. Like that is what is happening in these investment rounds. It's like there are 4 serious investing companies at the table, and then there's Don Jr. And I don't know, who knows if the guy that got, well, I guess he didn't get fired from the administration, but one of the cast-offs from Doge are sitting there getting paid. The greatest grift of all, though, the ties to, you said your youth as a religious man. Everybody who, believes in God and believes that we should follow the righteous path, they should feel comfort knowing that the leader of the White House Faith Office, Paula White, offered this video to her supporters this week.
So what are you going to do? You see, I have to be obedient to God. And you must sacrifice in some way during this prophetic season, because it's through sacrifice that your spirit opens up so wide that you can receive divine direction. This is a deliverance seed that needs to be sown now, to be in position, to see increase, to activate God's promises. And if you're able, I challenge you to sow $133, because we sow in accordance to the word. I love to get a word from God and put my faith with it. And 133 stands for Proverbs 133.
Proverbs 133. You just give me $133, and man, this moment of divine prophecy in Trump's golden age will shine on you, Will Sommer.
I was just about to say, where's she getting the 133? But it makes sense now.
Proverbs. I feel like that's a little cheap. I feel like she could have maybe punched it up a little bit. What the Paula White? So where did this lady come from?
Yeah, I mean, she's been around the administration for a while. I think the previous administration. I mean, she's kind of like a sort of one of these charismatic ministers. I looked her up. She every couple of years she gets like a big viral clip where like she was saying, she's trying to get Trump reelected, and then she just said and strike for like about a minute. But I guess it worked.
All right, we'll end it there. I'm super looking forward to all of the reporting on these weirdos and characters that you're going to do to educate us. You'll be kind of like a layer of the tabloid news, right? Kind of translating the tabloid news for all the rest of us. I really appreciate it, Will.
Thanks for having me.
One more thing before I leave. I just wanted to shout out Kevin Drum. He's a longtime liberal blogger that died this week. And I've gotten to work with him a little bit. We'd sparred a couple times when he wrote something when I was a flack at the RNC. Then we sparred again when I was a writer for the Bulwark, and we disagreed about a culture war column that he had written. But he's always fair-minded, always serious. I'd recommend going out and checking out his archives if you weren't familiar with him. Wanted to honor Kevin Drum a little bit. But there's a story that my friend Ben Dreyfuss wrote about him that I wanted to share with you guys. Ben writes the Calm Down Substack, which is advice that I don't take from him. But his Substack is usually quite amusing, if nothing else, and insightful. And he wrote about Kevin that they had worked together at Mother Jones at the height of kind of the awakening in the cancel culture world on the left. And Kevin was more of an old school liberal. And he'd written a couple things that some of the younger progressive staff didn't like. And this came to a head when he wrote a blog post about the movie Parasite, of all things, and how he didn't really prefer subtitles. And some people on the staff, some of the young progressive staff, decided that was racist, I guess. And, this thing snowballs and eventually results in Kevin leaving and going out on his own. All this happened. He had already been diagnosed with cancer at the time. And, the thing that Ben shares about Kevin is that at the time he was driving most of the traffic to the site. He said at one point 33%, then it went up and up and up, and was the second biggest driver for Mother Jones of revenue to the site. But every time they tried to give him a raise, he wouldn't take it. And he said he didn't need it, and he wanted to put that money back into the fellowship at Mother Jones. He wanted to support the mission. He wanted to support the salaries of the very people that ran him out on a rail. And he didn't say anything about that. He didn't tell anybody. He went out on his own and continued writing, continued to be true to himself. I thought it was a lovely story. It is a model that all of us should try to live up to, about being true to oneself, about not being bullied, about trying to support a cause that is greater than yourself, even if you don't agree with every single person that is associated with the cause. And man, he was a great writer. He influenced a lot of writers that I like, and he'll be missed. So rest easy, Kevin Drum. Thanks to Ben Dreyfuss for sharing that story. And everybody else, we'll be back here tomorrow for another edition of the Bulwark Podcast. We'll see you all then. Peace.